This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO. The Lighting Source, major line distributor of commercial and industrial lighting, including hard-to-find bulbs and fixtures, as well as a broad range of LED products. With 35 years' experience servicing lighting needs, The Lighting Source proudly sponsors Sports Files.
The WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
My guest today on Sports Files is former Memphis Tigers star wide receiver and 6-year veteran of the National Football League, Russell Copeland. Well, we've reached the halfway point of the college football regular season, and we're just a few weeks away from the same scenario in the National Football League. So what better time than now to get some insight and analysis from a guy who played both? Russell Copeland was a standout receiver for the Memphis Tigers in the early 90s and still ranks very high in their record book. In fact, the Tupelo native is 5th all-time at Memphis in receiving yardage and ranks 6th in career receptions. He also put together 5 games of more than 100 receiving yards. After his time with the Tigers, Copeland was taken in the 4th round of the 1993 draft by Buffalo. He spent 4 seasons with the Bills before ending his career with stops in Philadelphia and Green Bay. For some time now, Russell and his family have called Memphis home. And yes, he still has a vested interest in how his alma mater is doing on the playing field. Today, Russell Copeland shares his thoughts on everything from Ray Rice to Adrian Peterson to his picks for Super Bowl 48. And it's next on Sports Files. Russell, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Good to have you here. Let's start off with your alma mater. What have you seen from the Tigers? What have you seen from head coach Justin Fuente as this team tries to build?
I definitely think Coach Fuente has been doing a great job, especially coming off the loss against Ole Miss. I think when we went on the road and played against Cincinnati, he did a great job of rallying the troops, played great on the road. I think it's a little bit inconsistent from the offense standpoint. I think pretty much that's what you get from a young sophomore quarterback and Paxton Lynch. If we can be more consistent on the offense side of the football, I think this team has a chance to win this conference, especially coming up this weekend. I think that's definitely a game that we should win going against an 0-6 SMU football team. Yeah,
5 turnovers against Houston did them in. They're not good enough to be able to overcome a game when it's real sloppy.
Definitely. You know, we have a defense that's gonna be opportunistic, that's gonna be able to give us some turnovers, but we have to take care of the football ourselves, and we have to be able to score in the red area, touchdowns instead of field goals. But if we can protect the football more and be more consistent and get a little bit more playmakers other than Kraft, I think we'll be okay down the stretch.
How often do you get to see the Tigers?
I've only seen them one time this year, but I will be able to see them a little bit later on in the year, so I'm looking forward to that.
Russell, we live in an age where football has become hurry up, a lot of passing going on, a lot of points being scored. You played in the early 90s with the University of Memphis, then I guess Memphis State. What type of numbers could you put up if you were playing today?
You know, I think I could put up a lot of numbers, especially, you know, the type of receivers that we had when I played. Isaac was on one side, we had Matt Cody, and we had Steve Matthews. When you're able to spread the football around, you can definitely get a lot of matchups that you want, especially when you have receivers that can really play the position instead of bouncing guys around like a Percy Harvin. But if you have true receivers that can run great routes, it creates a lot of different matchups. So I think I could put up some outstanding numbers.
I'm sure you can. But also, I think in some regards, defensive backs are handicapped a bit by the rules. I think they give a little bit more leniency to the offense, to the receivers. I don't know if it's that they want higher scoring games, but it seems like it's tough sometimes to try to defend a big receiver for your little defensive back.
It's definitely tough, but when you look at it, you know, you have within 5 yards. When I played in the National Football League, basically you can get mugged pretty much all the way down the field.
Right.
So now, you know, receivers do not have, they have easy access to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. So, you know, receivers now can be able to put up big numbers. The quarterback can be able to get receivers in an open space more than its tight coverage. So it even helps the quarterback.
All right, let's make that segue. You're drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 4th round. You played 4 years there, played a little bit in Philadelphia and Green Bay. What was that experience like being an NFL receiver?
You know, looking back on my years, you definitely have to thank your accomplishment because I played with a lot of guys that are Hall of Fame caliber players. Mm-hmm. You know, I played with Thurman Thomas, I played with Jim Kelly, played with Bruce. Smith, you know, Andre Reed just recently got in. So when I look back on it, I enjoy it more than when I played because playing in the National Football League is not a given. You know, it's a great opportunity for you. So I really enjoyed that time playing in Buffalo, and I played for some great coaches. You know, I played for Marv Levy, outstanding guy, outstanding coach, able to get you prepared for the game. Mm-hmm. You know, I also had a chance to play for John Gruden, great guy, great X and O guy. So, you know, looking back on my career, you know, it's more important, should I say, now than when I played. When I played, I was caught up in it. I want to be a great player, but the moment comes and go. So 6 years went very fast.
Russell, a few weeks ago we did a special on concussions in the game of football. Things have changed a lot at all levels. There's obviously more information that's being divulged. People understand concussions a lot better, and safety precautions are being taken into consideration with rule changes and things like that. When you played, it was a little bit different. Do you recall having concussions? Do you recall being diagnosed with concussions? And then what happened when that did occur? You
know, as you mentioned, I think a lot of players in my era and even before, you know, were not intelligent or not really looked as far as concussions.
Or maybe educated enough
as far as concussions, because it was looked at, you know, it's a tough sport. And looking back, there are so many times that I had concussions and actually did not know, because if you look at the definition, when you're dizzy, when you see stars. So, you know, I can't call how many times that I actually had concussions that I did not go to a coach and say, you know, okay, I have a concussion. That will look at you, and if you're okay, you know, you could remember the last play, you would go back in. You
figured if you took yourself out, you may not be able to get that chance again to get back in.
And to be honest about it, you want to play. And I think that's the hardest thing that you look at it today. An athlete wants to play, but now we're looking at so many players after their football years is over, they're having a lot of mental problems. They're committing suicide. They're also having situations where they've committed double, you know, murder and suicide itself. So I've had a lot of concussions, and even to the day now, there's some things that I can't remember. I have headaches, and my wife, you know, she talked to me, she said, well, you know, you need to get that checked out. So when you're playing, you're not looking at life after football, but I think it's very important now that the players do take this into consideration, because your football days are going to be over, and you want to be able to enjoy life after football.
Well said. There are a lot of things we can certainly point towards concussions and head injuries of players not being able to cope with life afterwards. You talked about suicides, Junior Seau being the most prominent name. But there are other things that have nothing to do with head injuries. And it's an alarming situation. I don't want to say trend, because there's a lot more good guys than there are bad guys around in sports. Let's be honest. But the bad guys, the bad stories, they surface a lot easier. And by no means am I saying Adrian Peterson is a bad guy, but it's a bad situation. He's disciplining his child the way he felt should be disciplined, because that's the way he was. In this day and age, though, Russell, with video, with social media, the way it gets out there, I don't know if he understood the severity of it. What is your take on Adrian Peterson, who may never play again in Minnesota?
Definitely. You know, first and foremost, these are serious charges. These are some serious allegations made against him. You know, when you look back, as you mentioned before, the way we were raised, you know, some of us, it's a lot different today. You know, I can go back being in school when principals would call you into the office. You know, they would have several paddles, and they would do corporate punishment. But to this day and time, I think your wife or your girlfriend or whomever that you have a child with, you guys have to sit back and look, how do you want to punish your child? And you have to be able to look at the situation is that what's overboard. You know, I think you do have to have some type of punishment, but when you have your child battered and bruised, that's not, you know, spanking him. You know, that's going overboard. So when you look at the situation now, Adrian Peterson is looking at, you know, his freedom first and foremost. You know, that's something that he has to look at.
He's going to have a trial more than likely.
He's looking at his freedom. You know, he's looking at his reputation, and he has to be able to look at that he may never play football again. This is how serious these charges are. So, you know, I would tell anyone that's out there, you know, you just have to be very careful. You have to discipline your children because these are your kids. They have to be in today's society, and you're going to be responsible for them. But there's a line that needs to be drawn in the sand between discipline and going overboard.
We have a very serious situation with Adrian Peterson. We have another very serious situation with Ray Rice. When that second video came out and you saw that he knocked out his fiance, then fiance, who is now his wife, everybody realized the severity of it. The problem is that the National Football League, among others, did not realize the severity of it when the first video came out. Number one, I want your thoughts on the Rice situation, because here's a guy I really believe will not play again. Peterson, I'm not so sure. And then second, did the NFL drop the ball?
You know, first, when you look at Rice, as far as him not being able to play again, that's going to be a lot to be decided, because when you look at discipline on and off the field, there's been a lot of players that have done some things worse, such as manslaughter. You know, right. you look at Leonard Little, played for the Rams.
Great point.
You look at Dante Stallworth. You know, both of these people were driving under the influence, and they happened to kill someone. And there's a young man that played for Dallas last year that killed his teammate, Michael Vick. Whether you say, you know, the crime was more or it shouldn't have been, he still went to prison for a year and a half or a couple of years. So he's a felon. He's playing. So speaking of that, he may be able to play again, but looking at the situation that happened, these are serious charges as well. This is something that's not a football issue. This is a world issue. And this is what the NFL has to get right. And speaking of Rice, I hope that he and his wife are able to get this together, because they do have a daughter together, and they have, since the incident, gotten married. So that is an important issue here. They need to get this right. And as far as the NFL, there's an integrity issue that we're looking at with the NFL, because when I look at it, when security say they sent a video to the National Football League, we're talking about the commissioner. We're talking about one of the most powerful men in America. And for that video not to be able to get to him or his staff, you know, brings up a lot of red flags, brings up some question marks. And you know, I hate to say, did he see it or did he not see it? But when I sit back and look at this, maybe someone saw the video and said, okay, I believe that 2 games is going to be sufficient. And now I think when the public outcry comes, he comes back the next week and say, okay, well, what we're going to do now, we're going to give you 6 games for the first offense, and we're going to give you a banment for the second. Well, you had already laid down everything for Ray. You had given him 2 games.
And that's what his attorney is countering now.
You know, so to me, that's a question mark, because now it seems like we're trying to save ourselves. We're trying to save face here. And that's the integrity issue that I'm going to have with the commissioner now. And when I say this is a world issue, this is a world issue. It's just not a football issue. But these type of things have happened before, because I remember Warren Moon had the same type of situation back when I played. But in today's media, when you have all the type of media, all the different kind of phones, things are spread out.
Russell, real quick, who wins the Super Bowl? And then I'm going to get to 5 for the road with you.
You know, I do like Denver this year with what they're playing. Seattle is coming down a little bit, but I like the Dallas Cowboys. I think the way the Dallas Cowboys are playing.
You're jumping on the Cowboys bandwagon.
I do like the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay, we like to end all our interviews with 5 for the road. First thing that comes to mind, quick answers here. Favorite professional team in any sport?
The New York Yankees.
Favorite professional athlete of all time?
Muhammad Ali.
Great pick. Great choice there. Favorite music or genre or act?
Jazz.
Jazz music?
Yeah.
Okay. A particular jazz musician that you like?
There's different ones I like, but
Marsalis is pretty darn good.
Definitely.
Favorite movie of all time?
Life.
Life.
I love comedies. That's my favorite movie.
Who's in that?
Eddie Murphy.
Okay. That's a Murphy movie.
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah.
And then finally, favorite television show of all time?
Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence?
Yes.
Is it still in rerun, or
yeah,
can you see it nowadays?
It's still in rerun.
Beautiful. So again, Cowboys is your pick, right, to win it all.
And we go back and look at this. There's so much parity now. You know, there's so much parity that's going on in the league now. The playoffs actually are starting right now. But I do like the Cowboys. I like the way the Cowboys are playing.
We'll hold you to it. Great to see you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks for the insight.
Appreciate
Russell
it.
Copeland joining us here on Middays. We'll take on Sports Files. We'll take a quick break, come back with overtime right after this. 4 years ago, 9 area riders jumped on their bicycles and traveled 525 miles to the shores of Rosemary Beach, Florida, all in the name of raising money for cancer. Fast forward 4 years. In fact, just last week, and 25 riders, including 74-year-old David Tillmans, completed that same 525-mile trek, raising their bikes above their heads at Rosemary Beach in celebration for a 4th straight year of accomplishing this challenging but worthwhile endeavor. It's called the Wings Ride, and it benefits the Wings Cancer Foundation, whose motto is to create a safe place of hope and healing. They have raised thousands of dollars, with all the proceeds from the ride going directly to the Wings Cancer Foundation. Keith Merriman is one of the founders of the ride. He and his compatriots are part of Wolf River Racing, and they just love to ride. But doing this with added incentive makes it that much more meaningful. Earlier this week in Cancer Survivor Park, I spoke with Keith and David as they look back at their emotional and triumphant Wings Ride. Well, Keith, first of all, how did this all start?
Well, first I ride with Wolf River Racing here in Memphis, and just a group of us were together one night. We were talking and decided, hey, let's go for it. Let's see if we could ride our bikes to Florida. And so we decided to do it, but then we thought, well, we ought to do it for something other than just a group of guys on a bet. So one of the doctors on the ride, Todd Tillmans, works for West Clinic. He mentioned Wings Cancer Foundation. We thought, sure, why not? So we did it for Wings.
You just completed your 4th ride to Florida, and David went along for the first time. And David, you lost your wife 6 months ago, so obviously she was in your heart when you went on this ride. 74 years young, keeping up with these young bucks. What was it like?
Challenge and emotional, physical. Yet these gentlemen, as I rode along with them, they were there the whole time. I mean, they were supporting me, and I mean, even though I had worked hard to try to get myself ready to be able to ride, these guys are very unusual at what they do in a lot of ways, not just bike riding, but still, I had challenges getting in certain parts of the ride, and these men would kind of keep an eye on me, and they'd come up, and they'd, like going up a hill. If it was a struggle and I just couldn't get up enough steam to do it, they'd come up and they just put their hand on the palm of my back and kind of just pushed me up. It was really a beautiful thing. And the experience allowed me to comprehend, understand more how important all of us are to each other in times of trial and when we're having difficulties. And it wasn't just, it was me riding for my wife, it was me riding for what she wanted to have happen, and that was to try to make a difference for other ladies who, and she had ovarian cancer, other ladies who were suffering from what she has, and hopefully someday will make a difference.
Well said, Keith. It started with 9 riders 4 years ago. You had 25 on this ride, this particular ride to Florida. Keith, what's it like to train? How much training goes into a 500-mile ride?
Well, quite a bit. We've got the group of cyclists that went this year. I just want to state were several cycling teams throughout Memphis: 901, Los Locos, Cirque du Velo, and Wolf River Racing. And then there were some unattached guys as well. These guys ride all the time. I mean, Memphis has become a real cycling town. These guys ride every day. Now, for this ride, the long endurance rides are the key. You've got to do centuries before you attempt 5 centuries in a row.
You try to get about 100 miles a day. Is that basically the game plan?
That's correct. The longest day we've got is the second day, which is from Tupelo to Tuscaloosa. That's 130 miles. It makes for a long day. The good news is it's all south, so it means it's downhill. That's a joke. Reality is we climbed about 20,000 feet between here and the coast.
Wow. David, you go through some bigger towns and cities such as Tupelo. You go through some very small towns in rural America. Give me an experience or two along the way on this 500-mile drive that you particularly experienced and saw on the way.
Well, for me, most of the time, while these guys are casually kind of talking and enjoying the countryside, I'm looking at the wheel in front of me, making sure I don't run into it. Because if I hit it, then I'm going down, and a lot of people behind me could go down. So it was really an exercise in as focusing as well as I could. But I do remember going through certain areas like the dogs chasing us. You know, that was always fun. They'd come out and they'd protect their property, and then they go back. But then you ride by some horses and some of these beautiful stallions that they'd run along, and every animal that was out there, they're all looking at us. You know, there was 25 guys riding along, going about 20 miles an hour, and it was a cool experience. And then times when I wasn't able to keep going, I'd hop in the truck and I'd be following them, and it was beautiful looking at the countryside and just enjoying this part of the country and the people.
As a cyclist, you heard David talk about making sure he's looking at the tire in front of him of the cycle that's in front of the bicycle that's in front of him. You're an experienced rider. What are you thinking about going along on this 500-mile jaunt for the fourth time? What's going through your head, Keith?
You know, at some point, obviously safety's a key. You're looking at that. You're watching traffic. There's all types of things that are kind of popping up and going on. But I try to look around and take it in. America's still, you know, I mentioned earlier, Mayberry's still there. America's a beautiful place. So it's really fun just to kind of be there with your band of brothers. You're riding, you're having good conversation, and just taking it in. It's really a great thing.
All right, you cross over, you're into Florida, you're in the home stretch, you get to the Panhandle, and there it is. The destination is right there. You get to the beach. What was that feeling like?
Relief.
Euphoria.
Yeah.
Relief and euphoria.
It was overwhelming, not right at that instant because there was so much stuff going on, but after, you know, you put your bike down and you start walking around and it's soaking in. And for me, the most compelling part of that ending was the next morning. I just went out to the beach and I was by myself, and you know, I just reflected on the whole experience, and I said it before, it was a really incredible experience being able to ride with these guys and to experience what gentlemen they were, how loving they were, and how they would reach out, not just to us. I mean, I know they got to do it in a lot of ways with a lot of other people.
Right.
And it was a wonderful example of how I think people ought to be.
Keith, you get together 4 years ago. You guys are avid cyclists. You want to put this group together. You want to find a cause. You find a cause in Wings Cancer Foundation. How much bigger can this grow as far as the future is concerned?
You know, I think the sky's the limit. Logistically, there's issues with the number of riders. You know, this year we went from 9 to 25. Right. We've still got to feed everybody. We have to house everybody. There's a safety concern with the size of the peloton. But I didn't feel like we reached our limit, so I think we can definitely go further there. From the standpoint of raising money, we've done a great job, and we went from an idea and a bunch of guys hanging out talking to raising over $100,000 in now twice. So it's mind-blowing. You know, you can make a difference, you know, just off one person and an idea.
And a final thing for you to have David along, again at 74, having lost his wife, knowing what's going through his mind as he tries to make this 500-mile jaunt. What was it like to look over and watch him do this?
I was so proud of Dave, and I love Dave. He's a great man, and it was touching. And pulling into Florida and seeing him there, and he was in the front. We have a tradition. The new guys, they get to finish first. So the original 9 were in the back, and we got to watch these guys cross. And then our tradition is to walk down to the ocean, and we hold our bikes over our heads and get a photo. And it's a cherished photo.
And of course, not to be forgotten is your son is also a founder like Keith and a rider as well. So he participated. So he was there for you, and that's just another added bonus to have your son right there, right?
It was incredible, and I'll never forget it.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you,
David, Keith. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's great.
What a fantastic story. Once again, we give a big Sports Files thumbs up to college football in the state of Mississippi. The Mississippi State Bulldogs are now 6-0 and the new #1 team in the nation after beating Auburn last weekend in Starkville. Meanwhile, Ole Miss went down to College Station, Texas, and before an SEC record crowd of more than 110,000 fans, beat Texas A&M. The 6-0 Rebels come in at number 3 this week. Also from the gridiron, the Memphis Tigers have this weekend off after dropping a home game last Saturday to Houston. The Tigers committed 5 turnovers and seeing their record drop to 3-3. They'll return to action on October 25th when they travel to Dallas to face winless SMU. And that'll do it for now. Next week is our annual Grizzlies preview show. Plus, we'll travel to South Haven to chat with River Kings head coach Derek Lamesser as the Kings get set to embark on a new campaign. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO. The Lighting Source, major line distributor of commercial and industrial lighting, including hard-to-find bulbs and fixtures, as well as a broad range of LED products. With 35 years' experience servicing lighting needs, The Lighting Source proudly sponsors Sports Files.